you?
Oh, we're good.
Not yet.
We're on the other side of production, so that's always good.
How long is this? This one took 5 years? How many years?
It was about 7 years since we had the first idea, but we did, about 5 years of production. So
it's about as long as the Breadwinner.
You know yourself. You know yourself. They take a long time. Yeah, while Nora was working on Breadwinner, Ross and I did a tiny bit of work at the start of Breadwinner, but then we were focused on developing Wolfwalkers. So we were in the room researching ancient Irish folklore and wolves while everyone was animating the Breadwinner outside. So there was a bit of a difference, yeah.
There's a bit of a
gradually some of the
bit of a shock, actually, wasn't it? Sometimes Tom and myself would be inside our little conceptual room, laughing our heads off at all these crazy stories that we found, and then we would leave the room, and there'd be people animating, very somber, solemn scenes from the Breadwinner, and we'd have to remind ourselves, geez, okay, keep the laughter down.
That's interesting. What's also interesting, though, I wonder, because you, in a way, you're studying in all the films you do, and even in that comparison, different histories, and through the eyes of young women, which is very interesting.
Mm.
But how I'm sure there are many themes as well that run through them all.
Yeah, I think there's some connections, and I mean, even the fact that this one ended up being about two young girls kind of came after a couple of drafts of the script. And we realized that it needed to be a little girl as the protagonist, Robin, rather than that character being a little boy. And it made a lot more sense. And yeah, I guess that kind of dovetailed a little bit into some of the considerations on Breadwinner, or some of the things you were thinking about in that, Nora.
I think when we had decided to set it in a Puritan Cromwellian conquest of Ireland, it became much more relevant that a little girl would be struggling to have agency the same way as under the Taliban in Afghanistan. So I'm sure there's good connections there. What do you think, Nora?
No, absolutely. But I think as well, what's interesting with Cartoon Saloon and telling stories that are maybe a little bit outside of what you would expect for for animation, or for using animation in storytelling, is that you can kind of explore new things. So what was nice about Wolfwalkers was you had this female friendship, but it was very unconventional, and it wasn't. It was about kind of breaking out of boundaries and trying to, find a sense of freedom, but also with consideration of the environment around them, which did actually remind me a little bit of what was going on with the Breadwinner as well. But just telling stories, and be they girls or boys, I think, just finding different stories are told in slightly different ways, finding new ways to celebrate what it is to be a child, what it is to have a friendship. Those are kind of nice ways of exploring it.
I think there's stuff about finding yourself against the confines of society. Like, definitely a lot of the crew who came off Breadwinner and had done a lot of the kind of deep, like, I think the animation in this is a lot more subtle and sensitive than anything that I directed or co-directed before because of Breadwinner. Like, I feel that Nora pushed the kind of the emotion of the characters and the animation into something subtle. So a lot of the crew had that experience coming onto Wolfwalkers, which was great. We benefited from that anyway.
I have to say, and I've had a chance to work with different types of animation as well as regular film, but different types of animation. I was so impressed at it's a very different way that you all work that I think a lot of people maybe don't understand, and I felt I had the privilege to learn about when I was working on Breadwinner. And I remember that it was described to me about lines for a character, how many lines, and the budgeting. And as a producer, I was fascinated by this as well, that you couldn't just say, let's just draw anything we want and make every detail, and isn't that great? But that for the amount of lines it would take each character, if you added an extra arch in the eyebrow or an extra piece of hair, this was going to be budgeted across, because this was each line was going to be drawn and replicated, and it wasn't going to be put into a computer program that could suddenly do something, or it wasn't going to be, and there wasn't such a big budget. And I really have so much respect for that. I really, that discipline to decide each line, but but create full characters, decide what each line means.
It forces an economy, I guess, with the storytelling, and not many producers get that. Actually, I have to say, you know, in that like understanding that and being supportive then of how the directors can go for the story that they want within the economy of what they're trying to achieve, or what they have within the means of the budget. For Wolfwalkers was very similar to the budget of The Breadwinner, but it forces an economy or a simplicity and a streamlining, which can oftentimes make it much more direct and more powerful in ways when it's the artist's hand that has to draw that extra line. You know, and it has been fought for. I think that's something certainly with Wolfwalkers. You can see it's an absolute celebration of artwork and, you know, creativity.
We asked a lot of the crew on Wolfwalkers in terms of the line work. Like the final line of the characters had to change depending on what was going on for the characters. So we kind of had a really expressive angry line for Maeve when she was angry, or if the characters were from the forest, they had a really scratchy line, whereas the people in the town had a very hard kind of blocky outline. So we were trying to be a little bit more expressive with the line work than we'd been able to be in previous. So it was more like the final line animators had to think almost like comic book inkers or something. They had to think about what they were drawing and what the character was feeling, and not just keep the line perfect from frame to frame. So it was a little bit of an extra challenge, but they did a nice job. Again, we inherited a lot of talent from Breadwinner, so there was the studio has gone through periods of up and down, and we've had a nice period lately where the crew have moved from one project to the next, and they're learning from one project to the next. So that's been exciting to see too.
It brings so much emotion forward. I think that's what I felt when I watched it. Those lines and the decision in the direction that this line would have that energy, and then this line has this energy, and I think it is something that's not often thought about, or it's just never been something I've understood. You watch something, or I suppose it's with any piece of art, you see it and it just makes you feel something. You don't know why.
It should be invisible, yeah. And then the process. The more you learn about the process and the visual language and all the tricks, maybe you appreciate it more, but you shouldn't have to know about it to get the feeling of it. So hopefully most of our young audience won't. Like, I remember really loving like The Jungle Book or 101 Dalmatians, which were very scratchy and pencily, but I wasn't conscious that they were drawings. I just believed in the characters. It was more as an artist or an animator later that I rewatch it and really appreciate the artistry of it. So I think the first level is your audience of young people, and they should just get carried away by the story. And then there's a second level of appreciation, I think, that adults bring whenever they can see that there's a lot of craftsmanship to it as well. So,
but they might not even understand it as well, though. I think it's quite similar to, you know, like a good soundtrack or a good score, or you know, good visual language or good art direction. It doesn't need to be understood, and as you say, it should be something that you feel subliminally. Or subconsciously, and if it does bring you out of the story, and it's so obvious that you kind of go, oh wow, that choice of music is quite strange there, then it probably doesn't work, because you should be following the story along, and it should be all happening, you know, as a composite in the back of your head.
But it sounds like you were even aware, I think, what I'm trying to say and give you credit for, you're both very modest, so it's hard, but that because like a piece of art does this to you, and you don't understand it, when you do decide, which is a decision, to have that jagged line in that scene, it gives that emotion. And it's very interesting. I think I've usually heard animation, you know, you talk about what the character's doing, but it's not as much the line itself, the director itself saying, this frame is gonna just the way you described the three different ways lines were used in an emotional way. It's just very interesting. And it has the effect, by the way, my children love Wolfwalkers.
Oh, good.
So
there you go. So
I do too.
Have they started howling like wolves yet? Are they running around on the ground on all floors?
We've had that effect. I've had some family members, little ones, start howling, and it's great. They try and join in and help with the healing at the end. They all howl at the same time.
That's great.
I guess a very powerful message.
Yeah, no, I guess animation and live action are different in ways, and certainly elements like that to the art direction are quite different. But then when it comes to music choices, sound design, silence, things like that, they're much more similar though, and that's where they kind of come together as two art forms again to tell stories. I remember looking at First They Killed My Father and being really aware that the score was not it wasn't leading you. It was always just kind of supporting you emotionally, but never kind of leading you. So it never drew attention to itself for its own sake. It was always kind of in support of the story. And Wolfwalkers, similarly, the score, since it kind of comes from the environment. Again, it doesn't you don't notice it all of a sudden. It's just kind of comes up and is part of it. And again, I think that Tom and Ross really aimed for that with the musicians, right?
Oh yeah, it was nice to work with Bruno again too. Like Bruno and Bruno Coulet and the Irish folk band Keela have done the music for Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea and now Wolfwalkers. So just like we had a development in the art side, on the visual art side, we had a development on the music side. That collaboration, we benefited from the fact that they've been working together and had kind of absorbed a lot of the ideas that we've been developing over the different projects. So, yeah.
And I think Bruno knew exactly like what to expect from Keela as well. Like one thing that we noticed throughout the different recordings was that he kind of left a lot of space for this organic, chaotic kind of energy, this live performance that Keela will naturally bring. And so he had it was very similar to the visual direction that we had in the film, that there was this organized kind of process in the town, and everything was regulated and geometric and in its place. And then out in the forest, it's just instinctive and wild and free. And the music really mirrored that. For the final recording with Keela, Bruno, it was really organic the way it happened, and there was just so much energy in the room, and Bruno would just come in there and just go like la 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 la, and then they would sing, they would play and then riff on that and jam on it, and then they'd end up with something completely different, and it was just so beautiful to watch. It kind of made us all want to be in a band.
I think the music is always the nicest part for me, because the art side of it and the animation and everything is so painstaking and kind of glacial, but the music, suddenly at the end of a week you suddenly have 50% of the movie. I'm sure that's both your experience too as directors.
But it's different, I think, because you can with a regular film you can get to a rough edit pretty quickly, right? And then you can test a music, and you can also edit to that music. But if I was drawing to the next, and then it's interesting that you have the music. Do you ever redraw after music? Have you ever?
Yeah, it's more like at the very start we have an editing stage, where we kind of cut the storyboards to rough music or sometimes demos, and that's when we'll make changes. That's where we'll make most of the changes, when the animation is still really rough and before we spent a lot of time polishing it. A couple of times on Song of the Sea, definitely we recut the final sequence to the music when it came in, because it was just richer and different than what we'd expected from the demo. But rarely, yeah, usually you try and get it all kind of pre-edited. That's kind of Nora's specialty, actually. She's the animatic directing master.
You do, but you can also get you can get your demos up front as well for sequences. Like you already knew with the sequence for the Running with the Wolves sequence, that you were going to use a particular piece of music and you were going to use the same rhythm, and it was inspiring for the storyboarders and for the animators.
Yeah, Guillaume storyboarded that to the song, and it was actually a bit long. So what mostly happened there was Richie, the editor, kind of shortened it, and then we had to re-record the song. Aurora did the words a little bit different, and Bruno reorchestrated it a bit. But for a while, for most of the production, we were working with a kind of roughly edited version of the song to make it the right length. But yeah, you're right. We had to adapt to. We kind of storyboarded to it, then edited it, then re-storyboarded it, and there was a bit of back and forwards there. Yeah.
But this is a very special one though, because I know that this is the end of the trilogy.
Oh.
Well, I mean, hopefully the beginning of another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Another trilogy.
No, it's definitely coming to a conclusion a bit. Yeah.
But so really it's not just 7 years in the making. When was the first? When was the first of the?
Say this is 20 years in the making. It's 10 years since we finished Secret of Kells, which doesn't sound right because it's
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate the way that we might start counting from the very first concept or the very first like line on a page, but you might spend 4 years just even trying to find the funds or trying to find the budget and all that. So with Kells it was even more. But generally, from the time that pre-production starts, it's usually 3 years, isn't it? Or was it on Breadwinner, Nora?
I can't even remember. It was something like 7 to 5 years.
But definitely,
something like that. A blur.
When the three of us, like Ross was the art director in Kells and Nora was co-director with me, and I think we just wanted to get that film made. I don't think we thought we'd make a trilogy then. I don't think it was in our minds. I think we were just hoping to get that one finished, and if that one got finished, we would have been happy. But it was during Song of the Sea and before Breadwinner started that I sort of felt that myself and Ross would like to do a final piece and sort of have those three fit together. And because they were all, you could keep going forever if you didn't kind of call a halt to it. They always inspired, there's always another idea in terms of the Irish folklore that you could, but I think it's time for someone else to pick up that torch. Someone else in the studio.
You'd get trapped in that, Tom. You'd come in one day and you'd be like, I want to make a science fiction movie. And they'd be like, no, you're not allowed. No, it has to be based on folklore.
Yeah, I know. I already feel
that'll be the next thing, what you bust out after this. I want to be a part of it.
But I mean, that's what I was about to say. I'm a bit scared now. And we're after drawing a line in the sand and that we can't.
I think Ross is right. You're going to have to go all the way to something. You're going to have to shake it off with something so far.
Yeah, set in the year 4000, with like where everyone shoots lasers out of their eyes. That's it.
But so the third one, and it's also very special because it's Ireland.
This one's set in Kilkenny, where Ross and I grew up and where our studio is and everything. So it's not just Ireland, it's actually our hometown as well. So.
It means a lot for the town as well. During the lockdown last year, they did a whole installation up against the castle wall where you could see pieces of artwork from the film. So within, there's a mural gone up again now, near a very old church in the town. So the people of Kilkenny have really kind of embraced the whole thing, as they have the studio and everybody who's come to the studio over the years as well. It's all part of it. But yeah, I mean, Ireland is so rich in terms of heritage and storytelling and storytellers. But I think any culture really, once you dig in, that's what you find. And it's lovely then when you see similarities between Irish storytelling and Afghan storytelling, or stories from around the world. You can find similar themes through them all, because at the end of the day, we're all looking to stories. Yeah, we're looking to stories to tell us the same things, which is it going to be okay? I think that's what we, at the end of the day, kind of look to stories for. And that's, again, I think what's nice about making, particularly animation, because it is such a collaborative thing, because, you have your directors, but everybody who's involved over the sometimes decades, or sometimes, everybody has a piece to play. I remember with the Breadwinner, we were, spent a long time talking about the ending of the film and finding hope. And Angelina, you were amazing for that, because again, you were the right amount of support and the right amount of, just encouragement to try and find the subtleties of story in that way. And I think Tom and Ross as well, you found with their everybody working on Wolfwalkers, just everybody had something to add that a little piece to the puzzle that kind of made it what it is. I mean, the voices and Wolfwalkers are gorgeous too, and again, suited perfectly. And you're sometimes I think the character designs were a little bit influenced by the voices, and
yeah, well, definitely with Sean Bean, we were thinking of him for the dad right from the start, so he gives a bit of a caricature of Sean, the dad. I don't know if he ever picked up on that. He kind of just chuckled when we showed him the design.
Nora, your character was not influenced by you.
Yeah, that was the best voice. The best voice in the film was Nora Toomey, for sure.
There was a poor old lady in the kitchen.
Yeah, where
Nora's an old woman. Yeah, an old woman who says, "Come on, girl, you better come over here now, and you'll be a grand. Just keep doing this for the rest of your life, and you'll be grand."
And just before we came on, we were just talking about Nora's son, who's 12, but 3 years ago he played the played the leader of the Irish bullies who were picking on Robin as well. So there's a good bit of kind of local influence. But it's handy because the accents were local, so we could use a lot of local people for the Kilkenny people in it.
And also, I think Mike, Nora's husband, is also one of the background voices in there. So you nearly got the whole family in there.
Yeah, poor old Patrick.
It really does speak to how personal it is, though. There's such a personal film. But having not known any of that and watching it with my children, it's just a great film.
Oh, good.
You don't. I suppose you don't need to know all of the little kind of local stories.
But it does help you. Additionally, what you give to people with your films is you do teach people about other people's histories and folklores, and not to be kind of grand about it, but that is, the more we can learn about each other in that way, the more we all learned about Afghanistan together, the more we learn about the closer we are. The fabric is drawn together of being human. So it is really important, and it is really great that learning that a little bit.
Yeah, that was another theme as well of it, because it was the first one where we had a main character who wasn't from Ireland, because Robin was from England, and we were kind of speaking to there's a lot of polarization at the moment in the world, and there's always been polarization in Ireland since those times, where never the twain would meet kind of between Protestants and Catholics, or English and Irish and stuff, or so it would seem. But to tell a story of the two girls who don't care about any of that, but they see more in common with each other, and their friendship exists despite their very different backgrounds, that was kind of an important story, and it seemed to get more important as the production went on. We were kind of looking, it's not just Northern Ireland that is so polarized, there's a lot of places around the world that are getting more and more polarized. So trying to tell stories that point to the similarities rather than the differences between people, or celebrate the differences without making them seem less or better than, just different,
And what that is for the amount of children that will watch this and not understand it all, but just absorb it and just be that much more think, of course I should be open to somebody who's different from me. Of course I should learn about them. Of course we have things in common. And if we just raise children that way with that openness, then they're less inclined to become a lot of those things we've seen.
Yeah, I know, and it's important.
Like that division, like the things that people think, to create these divisions between sections of society or races or anything like that, are usually things that are learned as someone grows up. Children don't have those barriers, and will play with any religion, any skin color, or anybody who's there in the playground. And it's only really the adults that have those boundaries.
In society itself. And it also speaks a bit to the speciesism we wanted to talk about, this idea that we're in charge of the planet and can do with it as we see fit, rather than be respectful of it needing to exist just for the virtue of it being there. Wildness is important just in and of itself. And we were kind of talking about the species extinction of the wolves in Ireland is a long time ago, but prior to that there was an awful lot of folklore and a lot of kind of self-identity tied up in the wolves in Ireland, and how Irish people saw themselves in relationship to the wilderness. And after the colonization and the wiping out of the wolves and the clearing of all the forests, I think we forgot a lot of those stories, and a lot of things changed in how we saw ourselves. And so that kind of division, it echoes down through the centuries. And so trying to call back to that stuff is important too, that it wasn't always the way it is now, and that there's another way to be, and that we used to live in a bit more balance. So when you talk about other cultures, I actually took a lot of inspiration later on in the production. I started to see a lot of parallels with like Native American culture, and the way that those people can see the connection between humans and the natural world as not being so concrete and separate. And a lot of those ideas kind of crept into the movie too, So yeah.
There really is nothing more important now.
Yeah, well, with the crisis that we're all facing in terms of the environment and stuff, it's, on one level, you can say that we lose a lot of important stuff if we lose stories and folklore connected with the animals. But also, just after Wolfwalkers, we did a small piece for Greenpeace about the Amazon, and was focusing on jaguars. And it was kind of sad to see that a lot of the story that we talked about in Wolfwalkers in the 1650s in Ireland is happening now in the Amazon in South America. And a lot of parallels were there, and so it felt very relevant, and both pieces sort of seemed to play off each other because we made one straight after the other. So I think it's those conversations, if they can be sparked in a gentle way and not in too didactic a way, if those ideas and themes come through, maybe on a secondary level, I think that's important too.
And in a hopeful way as well, and then
Yeah.
especially I think for family films and films for children, not to to always kind of focus on the hope because that is energizing, and that is something that motivates children more than ever. So that's again, like Wolfwalkers being a celebration of nature, I think it's a particularly positive way to kind of explore those themes. But yeah, and I suppose it is interesting that it came out this year, and with everything that's going on, it's a timely film for sure.
And putting yourself in the shoes of the other.
Yeah, yeah. That was the big thing with the wolf vision, trying to see the world through the eyes of the wolf and show how Robin could never go back to her life before once she'd seen the world through the other person's or the other species' eyes in that case. Yeah.
Mm.
And then also like the Lord Protector using fear of the other as a way to control society. I mean, we've seen that in a lot of countries over the last couple of years. And what we thought would be less relevant as the years went on, when we came up with the story 6-7 years ago, we were kind of thinking, oh, well, maybe the world will have changed and become such a better place that these themes won't be relevant.
Won't be relevant anymore.
And unfortunately,
yeah,
even the forests on fire, like we were painting backgrounds of forests on fire while we were seeing footage of Australia, then California on fire, so it seems like a lot of this stuff is more relevant and maybe a little bit uncomfortably relevant at times, but somehow timing works like that. I don't know why.
It's really it's a powerful film. It's a very, very powerful.
And that's the main thing. We talk about all these heavy themes, but hopefully overall it's a joyous experience when you come away from it. And when I see the kids running around on all fours howling like wolves, that's success,
Yeah, if we could get a few more adults to do that, then we would have won.
Well, I know I have to ask, and I know you don't. I know awards and all of this, sometimes people say, it's not, well, it never is what a real measure of, well, this film is good or bad, whether it's received this award or had this. But I do know that especially for, you don't have a big company, you're not Disney, you don't have all of and I know what it means to have the other films you've done have all been acknowledged and been nominated, but yet to win.
We don't want to break the streak anyway of the nominations, actually.
Yes, hope to continue that streak. And really personally, I hope this is the year, and I believe it should be the year, which would be nice. I know it doesn't change how much we all love the film, whether it does or doesn't, but I really hope it does. I really believe it should win. I think it's very, very, very special, and I think so I'd love to see it. That'll be out there.
It'll give it an extra push.
Your fingers crossed.
Well, the main thing will be if it helps us reach a broader audience and stuff. I think that would be the thing about it. And that's the nice thing about all the awards. Since Secret of Kells, it's really changed the studio's fortune, the fact that we have been acknowledged. So we're always grateful even for that, even the nomination side, and a win would only be even better. But no, that is the nicest part of it. And we got to meet people like yourself and other people in the industry from our little town in Kilkenny and our small studio here in the middle of Ireland. We managed to make contacts across the water, which has been really special too. Well,
we're all very lucky to have been able to meet you and come in contact, because we're that is the fun of our business. We forget that sometimes so often, right? It just seems like it's become a business, and it's not.
Yeah.
But this new way, especially, this is my dog trying to get in.
Your wolf.
My wolf.
I had to mute myself. My son is jumping around on the ceiling upstairs.
Oh, hello. Who is this?
Exactly.
What's his name or her name?
It's Dusty. He's a Rottweiler, but he's a big baby.
Yeah, I know. But that's the nicest thing about the whole era of Zoom and COVID. We're all getting to see each other's cats, and cats walk across the screen, dogs come. My dogs are always barking at the neighbors' dogs. Jesus, they're frenemies.
I am hoping that this it's a strange thing, all this happening. There's obviously all of the horrible side of all that's happened these years, but and there's all the dangers of too much with technology, but that we can do this, that we can work like this. And
so
how
amazing.
just in the past few decades, how things more and more have brought our art together, brought us, as you say, across the waters, and we've started to work together and make things together, and it really is. It's amazing, and it's a different time. I hope it just continues to grow.
I think there's a lovely.
What more can we do together? What more can we all make
without having to jet around and pollute the planet too much more, and we can actually do work from remotely and stuff, which is exciting.
For sure.
And also,
I love the knowledge. Right, the sharing of knowledge. I've taken part in so many workshops and listened to so many Q&As, like that I usually would have had to travel for, or felt I would have had to travel for. So it's amazing just having them there that you can just listen.
But I think it's kind of surprisingly humanizing too, because you think technology is dehumanizing, but when you meet somebody's pet or their baby is crying and you're talking to them and they're at home, there's something very humanizing about that. I feel like a lot of people I've spoken to during this period, I've gotten to know them in another way because I've been chatting to them at home and they're maybe a bit more relaxed or whatever. So it's nice too. There's a nice side to it. Yeah. Thankfully.
Yeah.
Angelina, thanks so much for doing this. It was really kind of you to share your time with us.
I am a big fan, and I miss working with everybody, and I'd like to do it again. So whatever, always keep me in mind, and just as a mom and as an audience member, thank you for such an amazing film, and it's just brilliant, and it has so many good messages in it, and it's so beautifully done, and it was really something I was needing something in my life and in the middle of quarantine to share with my children that could get us thinking and bring us forward, and that's been this film for us. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.